Today we're going to factor 2 terms, 3 terms, and 4 terms. When it comes to factoring, the first step for all of them is always going to be checking for the GCF, your greatest common factor. So for our first section, we have our 2 terms. Our first one's be difference of squares, meaning our first and last term are both perfect squares and there's a difference between them. What happens is your final answer would just be a minus b and a plus b. These two can go back and forth. It doesn't matter which one goes first. So for our first example, we have 50x squared minus 2. Now, first step is GCF, which is going to be a 2. So then we have a 25x squared minus 1. Now, you want to think to yourself, well, what do I square to get to 25x squared, which is a 5x? And then what do I square to get to 1, which is 1? So this is my A, this is my B. Make sure you drop down your GCF in your final answer. So we're going to say, well, A minus B, and then A plus B. And this is your first answer. Now another 2 term is now difference of cubes. Same concept, but now they're perfect cubes. So what happens here is the formula is a little bit different. We have an a minus b, then a squared plus ab plus b squared. Now an easy way to remember what signs to use the word SOAP. Meaning you got your same sign, so negative and negative, opposite, so now it's a positive, and then always positive. So this last one should always be positive. So in number 2, we do not have a GCF. So we once again ask ourselves, what do we cube to get to 8x cubed? A 2x. Then what do we cube to get to 1? Which is 1. So then this is our A, this is our B. So now we're going to say, well, A, same sign. Since it's a negative, it's a minus. Then our B. Then we're going to do a squared. So you have 2x squared is going to give you a 4x squared. Make sure you square that first term. Now the opposite sign, so we have a negative, now it's a positive. Then we're going to multiply a and b, which gives us a 2x. Always positive, b squared is 1. And here's your answer. Now sum of cubes, same thing. And SOAP uses the same for this one. So we have same, opposite, always positive. So number 3, we have a GCF, which is going to be 2. So we got an 8 plus 27x cubed. Now, what do we cube to get to 8? We cube 2. And then what about 27x cubed, which would be a 3x? So this is my A and then my B. Once again, bring down your GCF, which would be a 2. Then my A is 2, same sign, then my B. Then a squared, so 2 squared is going to be a 4. Opposite, multiply A and B gives you a 6x, always positive. Square B, you get a 9x squared. And then here's your answer for the third example. Now we have 3 terms. We have ax squared plus bx plus c. Now in number 4 we have a GCF of n. So we have an n squared minus 14n plus 45. Now this is my a, my b, and my c. An easy way to organize your factors is you create this x. What happens is you take a times c and put the number in the top of your x. So my a is 1, c is 45, so 1 times 45 is 45. Then you put b on the bottom. Make sure you include the sign, so it'll be a negative 14. Now you want to find 2 numbers that when I multiply I get 45, but when I add them I get negative 14. So we're going to say, well, negative 9 and negative 5, when I multiply it gives me 45, when I add them it gives me negative 14. Now because a is 1, these are your 2 factors. So you bring down your GCF, you got your n, then you have it negative 9, so it'll be n minus 9, and then that negative 5, so it'll be n minus 5. And this is your answer here. Now in number 5, we have a 3 term again, no GCF, but now we have this sort of, our a is now greater than 1. We do the same process with the x, but there's just one more extra step we have to do. So you say a times c is a negative 28. My b is negative 12. So my 2 terms are going to be 2 and negative 14. Now since a does not equal 1, we have to create this box here. It's super similar to the one when we multiplied it, but now we're sort of working on the inside, working out. So we have our first term, first box. Last term, last box. Now to fill in these 2 boxes are going to come in with your 2 factors here. All you have to do is just include a variable with it. These 2 can switch. You can have the negative 14 on top if you wanted to. Now we're going to pull out our GCF out from this row in this row, in this column here. So when I look at my first row, I have 4x squared plus 2x. So our GCF is going to be 2x. Now on our second row, we have negative 14x minus 7. Since there's a negative on the outside of this box, you have to pull out a negative. So our GCF is now going to be negative 7. Now, our first column is 4x squared negative 14x is going to be a positive 2x. There is a negative down here, but our outside box does not have a negative, so we pull out a positive. Then 2x negative 7, all we can do is pull out a 1. So we're going to have our 2x minus 7 as our first binomial, and then our 2x plus 1 as our second binomial. So the GCFs you pull out are going to be your final answers. Now in our 4 terms, you're going to group the first two, and then the last two. Make sure you include the signs with it. So we got 35xy minus 49x. You want to pull out the GCF for this one, which is going to be 7x. So we'll have left over 5y minus 7. Now, this leftover is going to have to be exactly the same as the one over here. So when I look at here, I have a positive and a negative and a positive. I have to pull out a negative. Now my GCF is going to be k. So when I pull out a negative k, I should have a 5y minus 7. These two should always be the same. Now, your GCFs are going to be one of the binomials. So you got a 7x minus k. And then your leftovers are going to be your other one. So you got 5y minus 7. And you only write it once. On these ones, always double check your binomials to make sure that you cannot factor any further. Now, out of all these examples, we are able to factor them. If there is one example you cannot factor, you just say it's prime.